Welcome back, everyone, to the Fight Against Boredom Starborne Players podcast. We are your hosts.
I'm Fecka.
I'm the casual Albendinger.
And I'm Branksbro.
Let's get this week's Fight Against Boredom started. Becca, take it away.
In this week's podcast, we're going to talk about the start of beta and the many new faces it brought. Among them are two guys here who started streaming the game on Twitch, and we're happy to welcome CaptainCollins and Haunted.
Hi, I'm CaptainCollins.
Hey there, this is Haunted from Haunted Channel.
Thank you for being here, guys. So let's get right into it. How did you actually find yourself playing Starborne? We'll start with you, Captain.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I started playing because I saw a tweet of PC Gamer who pointed out that the beta is running, and I thought that this is exactly what I want to play, like a simulation in space. That's me. I'm gonna jump in.
Very similar. Sorry,
no, you go.
Very similar on my side. I saw an article from Rock Paper Shotgun, and I work for a video games publisher, so I'm always interested in new games and new betas and alphas. Partly because I work for the publisher, partly because I just am. And yeah, an MMO RTS sounded like a really cool combination, and I like Civ, and I played some browser games in the past, and therefore I was up for it.
That's really good to hear. I'm glad this whole beta press thing worked out, because I know they had problems with the ads. They couldn't get them approved, so everyone was worried no one would come play the game because there's no way of seeing it. So it's really cool to see these things actually work out for them.
Mm-hmm.
So what amongst all of the things that the game promised was it that actually drew you in, and what was it that actually kept you, Haunted?
I'm pretty easy to convince to try something out. I'm easy to just grab something and play and give it a try. And yeah, I think the fact that it kind of triggers the Civ feeling for me. And I've been talking about this a few times on stream, but whenever I played Civ, I always want to play it multiplayer, and I have the problems that people drop out very fast because they're not happy with their spawn or something goes wrong, right? And then after an hour or so, you're left with maybe one other person. But in this game, it's kind of like a Civ game, but no matter how many people drop out, you will always have someone else to play with. And that's one of the things that keeps me so far.
So the multiplayer aspect, actually getting to play a grand strategy game in multiplayer.
Yeah, I like that you touch on. You got it, Captain. I'll comment on both of them afterwards.
I was just saying while sipping my coffee.
No, Captain. If you want to hit us with what kept you around, besides the initial rush.
What kept me around was
Al.
CaptainCollins.
Yeah, of course. What kept me around was the idea behind the game. I was triggered by the style because it reminds me of O-Game. Maybe you know O-Game.
Yeah, that's been referenced a lot for sure.
Exactly, and I feel like this is like the evolution of it for me, because like I played it as a teenager, O-Game, with just lists and numbers, and everything was in your mind, and now I can see everything, and there is stuff flying around, there's something happening, and I got to play with a lot of people. The chat is really active, I have to say. This is also pretty good in this state of the game. And yeah, I think also a big part of it was the big attention. At least for me, it was a big attention for the game when it started. I don't know if you saw it, but I think I was the first one streaming it on Twitch, and a lot of people came in, and they were so happy that someone is covering this. That it was a part of it. It helped me there.
It's a game that we found, because of how we play the game, we consider it's a game that you can't really stream. You'd be giving away too much information. Like in some games, I think a big one, for example, is League of Legends, where people get stream sniped. I don't know how many people actually actively stream EVE Online. You're basically giving away a lot of information, and I'd never consider streaming this game because I'd be giving away not just information about what I'm doing, but also my teammates. But when you're new to the game or even have played this for a while and you see somebody start streaming the game you really like, I think everybody's really happy about that. I know certainly we were and still are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how do you guys think you'll overcome stuff like that? If there, especially once beginner protection is starting to drop off. I know Haunted said he plays in servers 2 and 3, so I think they still got 5 or 6 days left. But have you guys kind of thought about that, or have something prepared for that?
Haunted maybe first.
Yeah, I thought about it already because I usually when I play games online, I'm drifting off into the competitive area of them quite quickly. And I didn't think I would do with this game, but now that I spent some hours with it, and some hours is like lots of hours of the weekend, probably like a lot, just like a lot of us. The more I spend time with it, the more you kind of grow fond of what you build in your own base and together with your alliance, and therefore you care more about it, and then you also don't want to lose it just because some people see exactly what you're doing. So I think for me, it might end up that I play one server for fun and stream it, and then I'll play another server in quotation marks serious, where I don't stream anything about it and keep everything secretive. But we will have to see how much you can play this game for fun without being like serious, right?
Yeah, that's something we often kind of struggle with, and we're running 2 alliances right now, and we consider one to be the more fun alliance, and then between servers, as you guys will kind of see after you finish the server, you're not necessarily ready to play another completely serious server right at the beginning again. So we've dabbled with the idea of how do we play a fun server. But even then, you still find yourself crawling back into the competitive mode. Oh, this guy's doing this. So I'll definitely be tuning in because I'm interested to see if you can actually keep it fun in that actual trying, and then seeing how your alliance members kind of react to oh, dude, this guy, I know he's playing for fun, but maybe we have to kick him from the alliance because he's giving away all of our movements, or this or that. So finding other people that are okay with you having fun in that way, I'm very interested to see that journey.
Actually, if I can say something to it, as a streamer, it's always the kind of thing where you're not really like a player for yourself, and you have to keep in mind like everything what you stream is there that people can see what you're doing, can exactly see where you fail, where you win. What you're doing, and if you do something completely wrong as they would do. So if I would stream this more often and keep it on stream, I'll be definitely okay with just showing everything. And I mean, I just checked it. You can also, if you check your movements, you can gray out the alliance so that you don't see what your alliance is doing. And
Yeah.
I think this is at least the point where you can say, okay, I keep my focus on myself, on my own sector, and I don't show the great map, what everything is going on, so that people don't see that. But yeah, I think this should be not a big problem for the alliance if the streamer keeps that in mind, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting because I think about that even when I just made my most recent videos. The first time I did it on a live server, and I sat there and I'm like, oh man, make sure my alliance colors aren't something that might offend someone. Oh, God forbid you color someone red on accident, and then you show the map and oh, this guy's colored red, and they'll be upset. So yeah, that's gonna be that's interesting.
I mean, one way to fix the whole you giving away information while you're streaming is just to become the best at PvP and not matter anymore.
Right, just be the best.
Yeah.
Get
point.
good.
Come at me, bro.
Yeah, if you reach the state where you're untouchable, then yeah, okay.
But I mean,
yeah.
honestly, in this game, I would argue that there is no such state as being untouchable. There's always some way they can leverage some advantage and crack you open all the way.
Without a doubt, especially with these 15-man alliances now, this is something that's pretty new to the server. Is they've dropped down to 15. The previous server is 25. They've dabbled with 20, but even before, when they're larger numbers, you had these things coalitions, which is an alliance of an alliance. Now we're just working with 15 people. Like even like the smallest alliance can come and nuke one of our guys, and that's a huge hit. Opposed to last time we had a coalition of 100 players, and now we're down to 15. And it's like, man, how do you deal with it? So yeah, the stream sniping, it would be super real if like, man, that guy doesn't have this and that. But I guess a more active player could, they can spy you, they can probe your station and know most of the stuff. I like the turning off alliance members movements and stuff like that. I wonder if in game design, Solid Clouds will kind of consider that as they move forward. If streamers can actually do this and give them some kind of tools to continue trying to play a little bit incognito without screwing their whole alliance.
If you were able to hide certain elements of your UI while still being able to do most of the stuff, I think that would be a good step to making the game streamable if that's something they want.
Right.
That's a good point that I just thought about, that lots of games already have a streamer mode that people can activate that hides their drop or hides their pick in a game or something like that. If I don't know, it probably depends on how big Starborne becomes and how streamable it really is. If there's lots of streamers jumping on it, maybe it would be worth developing something like a streamer mode. But I think disabling alliance movements is already a good thing in the game that would help with that and be a bit more incognito.
That is actually a function. You can show my movements, your alliance movements, and other movements.
Maybe like other stuff, like add it to that, or maybe even like you can't click show alliance movements if you've entered streamer mode, kind of as a dumb safety.
Yeah.
Because I'd be the first person to accidentally give up everything and then be ousted.
So how was your experience on like launch day and not just discovering the game, but kind of also discovering this community, Captain?
Ooh, I mean, basically the community came to me. I did not discover them, so that was a big change here for me. And I felt really like how do you say that, with open arms, welcomed, and also it was a really a huge help that a few of the team also came into my channel and just taught me something from the game, because not everything is self-explaining, and that was a big advantage at this point, because I didn't know anything about it, and I learned everything in 4 hours. Not even in 4 hours, I'm still learning, I have to say that. But
we're still learning, if that helps.
Yeah, that helps
well
a
over
little.
a year now, and it's crazy, man.
It helps to know that you're not alone.
Oh yeah. I think that's one thing we kind of wanted to show with this podcast too, is we are having these conversations like this all the time, and someone would join a voice chat and be like, man, like this is all stuff like no one's really talking about. There's no videos. It's really hard to stream this game, especially with the rapid iterations of the game. Every time something was released, I'm sure some of you out there that have been watching YouTube, if you caught any of Admiral's videos, it's like from A8, and then A9 came afterwards, Alpha 9, and then the tournament server, and then this, and each one had these huge changes. People are asking questions that aren't even relevant anymore. So yeah, it's definitely part of it.
So how was day one for you, Haunted?
Absolutely agree with Captain Collins here. It was a mixture of a surprising amount of people coming in on their own. I would have not expected that. But for some reason, a lot of people found me. Probably one of the reasons was that Snuggums shared my stream in the Discord, which of course draws a lot of attention, right? But then in the beginning, it was a great experience for the reason that a lot of people helped me with stuff, and a lot of knowledgeable people came in and were like, hey, you should do this, or when I had a question, they were very quick to answer, which people are, by the way, also in the support channel in the game, which is also a great thing. And then after a few hours, it turned more into the tables turned a bit, and people came in and were like, "Hey, can you tell me what scouting is for, or can you tell me how to change the name of my base or my profile picture and stuff?" And since I had that knowledge already at that point, I was happy to share it, and therefore the tables turned, and then now it's kind of a 50-50 situation where most people come in with super early game questions that I'm able to answer, and then I reach a point that I haven't reached before where I have a question, and then most of the time someone's around to answer it. And yeah, so in conclusion, the community has been amazing so far, very helpful, very communicative, and very active.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. That's really good to hear. Like, I'll be honest. For me personally, I think the community is more than 50% of the reason why I am still playing the game and love the game. I mean, of course, it's an MMO, so community is a big part, but this one especially, we go through thick and thin together. I mean, you basically sign up to play 10 weeks with each other, going deep, going off the deep end together, staying up a lot late at night, wasting a lot of
Staring at
hours.
pixels.
I think if you really play with an alliance and you go through thick and thin together, you are bound to become family of sorts. Maybe that word is too strong, but yeah, for me, that's what it is.
Yeah, we like to think so, and that's like a natural progression of the game too. That I know a lot of people will probably have questions of and stuff like that. Like the pre-made conversation, but that's truly where it comes from. I know a lot of people will do all kind of accusations, but I highly encourage you to try to play a whole server with a group of guys and be like, "Nah, I don't want to play with you again because I'm afraid of being called a pre-made." So that kind of stuff is something you'll experience as well. But yeah, it really is a community, man. It's not a game with a ton of interesting stuff. Obviously, it's very interesting, but it's not very exciting. Like on a day-to-day basis, right? You're logging on, you're updating queues, but having the people with you, having a really active Discord like ours, I'm lucky enough to bring in people. It's been a really cool experience for us as well.
It's a cultural thing as well, right? That's something I discovered, that you sit around and you talk to some guys like, how are we going to do this? Can we like work together as a team? And then you realize that you're talking to somebody from Texas. You're like, hey, what's it like living in Texas? What do you do for a living? And you get to talking. That's a really big part for me. And that's a good segue. Like, I realized that both of you, Captain and Haunted, you're German, right?
Yep.
So it
Yes.
seems to me that there's a surprising amount of Germans hiding in this game. I wonder why.
From a video game publisher perspective, I can confirm that Germany is the #1 market for everything strategy game, and also board games. And this game is basically a board game, but times 1,000, right? And blown up to max. This game is made for Germans. And then, as Captain Collins mentioned, O Game, I think that has been a massive hit in Germany.
Yeah.
And every German person that sees this game and has played O Game, I see 90% of them download it and give it a try, because yeah, it's exactly what we had in our heads when we played O Game, and now it's a giant map. Now we can play it out, and Germany is the perfect target audience for this.
Yeah, just look at the other examples which work really well in Germany, like for example Anno or Anno, and there's another big game, The Guild, which is also just like very well known in Germany, but outside of it, it's just unknown.
That's
So,
really
so we should be on
interesting.
the lookout for the German alliance, right? We have the Russian alliance and the French alliance.
Oh yeah, the
bound
Russians
to-
are strong too. I saw.
Yeah, Zorka's an
Yes.
amazing alliance. Had them.
I like that you compared the game to a board game, because last episode we had Gertjer, the CEO of Solid Cards, on, and we asked him to give us like the 30-second sales pitch, and he basically said it's a massive multiplayer. What do you call it?
Monopoly.
Monopoly.
That's it.
With
That's
like
what
a
he-
million tiles or what it was. Like, it's, yeah, even he thinks it's a board game.
At its core, yeah. I think with a little bit of fancy graphics, right, at the end of the day.
Yeah, and Monopoly makes people rage, as can this game. So I think it's an apt comparison.
Yeah.
So what are kind of your thoughts as people that are stepping to this game as new players? Like when you see this game and try to imagine the depth or what end game could look like, what are your thoughts on that, Captain?
I would say start off any server you like. Do whatever you like. Start your first server and try to learn as much as you can. You will not learn anything. You will not come to the very end of like fighting or exploring or whatever you can do there. But you can do that in your second server, and maybe you can compete on your third.
Quite the same for me. I think I started quite ambitious and thought, I can stem 2 servers of this. I can play 2 servers at the same time. But that is during the weekend. And once my workday starts tomorrow again in a normal 5-day, 9 to 7, 9 to 5 workday, yeah, that's not going to be possible anymore. And I realized that during the weekend, and the deeper we go into a server's lifetime, the more complex and the more time consuming it will become, right? You will not just log in for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, fill your queues, and that's it. There will be, especially since I have an alliance, there will be some scheming, there will be some planning that needs to happen. And that might also be outside of those 30 minutes that I choose to play. That will have to be when other people are here. So I think I cannot fathom yet how much time this will take to play properly and to get to the end game and survive, and maybe even compete for like maybe top 10 alliances, top 20 alliances, something like that. But I'm bound to find out, and I switched from playing both servers to the fullest to playing one of the servers as like an experimental server and just try out crazy things that I think that I don't know how they work yet, and just go in all directions and do things I would not normally do, and then use that as experience to implement in my actual gameplay on the other server.
One thing I want to add, I'm still on beginner protection like for 4 days, and I have 200 raiders. So I think that this is maybe a bad start, but in 4 days, maybe my world go down. I don't know.
I think that once the starter protection goes down with how the game looks like right now, things are probably gonna get really crazy. So before this iteration of the map, we had a map where you had, I think it was 17 sectors. You chose what sector to start, and you basically everybody spawned where they wanted to be on the map. Whereas now, people all start around the edges and migrate to where they want to go. And people are clustered up a lot in these edge sectors now. All the overlapping you have. You want to raid everybody's NPC, but they're attached to it, right? So I think there will be a lot of combat in a couple of days. I'd be surprised if it wasn't that way.
And I would like to hit on what both you guys kind of just said there. Like, I can't actually believe how much both you just hit the nails on the head. First with Captain talking about kind of expectations for the first server, and we've had a kind of a podcast entirely about this. And like for your first server, not necessarily expecting to go out and absolutely crush that server, but taking it as a learning opportunity. Even on the second, after you learn stuff, it's quite the learning thing, and then really trying to be competitive on the third, like kind of once you've really gotten a full grasp of what a full game looks like. And then with Haunted trying to play multiple servers, because at its base, right, a game like this, you'd think like, oh, I could easily play. It's a queue game. I queue stuff up. I don't have to actually be doing it. But how much work actually goes on in the back end as far as like, I can't necessarily play all day at work, but I'm on Discord a lot. And it's like you're coordinating all day, like you said, scheming with your allies, talking about what needs to be going on, and just overall coordination, delegation, trying to play this game. Like you're not even playing it, right? You're playing. I probably put more time into Discord than I do actual Starborne trying to play the game. So both those are really, I honestly, insightful points for people that have been playing. I think what you guys have been 3 days now or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be careful with the scheming part, though. We've got one of us tried this. It didn't end well.
Yeah, Albaninger had his taste of it. And ended up getting nuked off the map his first server trying to over scheme.
Good times. Good times.
I mean, I remember the conversation we had back then, Al. I told you, like, you're very ambitious. It might work, but there's a very high chance that it wouldn't. I'm not
Oh,
one to say I
went
told you
into
so,
it.
but you know.
Oh, I went into it fully expecting to die. But that's why I run the Alliance for the memes.
Yes.
Well, kind of talking about, like, since you guys were able to hit so well on the servers, what do you think some of the bigger hurdles you've hit in these first few days that, you know, a new player would do greatly to hear about? Like Captain, sure.
I think I don't want to talk about the server itself, stability,
Yeah,
because that was a beta. That was a beta start. I mean, it's for testing reasons, and they try to test things out with a lot of people. So I expected that. That was not a thing. But it's now very stable. And what was the question?
Like, just kind of the biggest hurdles you've gone over in this first server that someone might be able to learn from, or just something you found that was kind of difficult to either grasp or do, or maybe a mess up, maybe you place stations wrong or something.
Yeah, right. So basically, you have so many abilities there, and you try to figure out what's the best for you, but you don't know anything about what will what will impact with that in the late game. So I kind of like went to a point where I just read something, I think, okay, maybe that suits my game style, and I think I could go that way, just build it, whatever. I have a second station I can build there, and it's something different. I can make things different, and like I said from the start, you can do everything like different on your second server there. But here is actually like click on everything. Just try to do stuff, go everywhere, try to also a big thing is read chat, read their questions, read the answers, try to answer for yourself the questions, and that will help you a lot.
I like that one a lot. Yeah. Haunted, anything from you that you think are, you know, big tips for new players, hurdles that you've overcome?
Big tip is definitely follow the tutorial achievements. They explain a lot of the basics, I think, that get you started. Another big one is whenever you see an info button, click it because it has really good information with numbers and stuff that most people are gonna look for that play these types of games. And then there's two things that I found to be hurdles. The first one is the fact that a lot of your future what's the name of the empire, I think, right? It's called your
Stations,
empire.
empires, yeah,
Yeah,
whatever.
your empire. A lot of the future of your empire depends on the choices you make in early game. For example, the tier 4 outposts, they require a certain amount of buildings in that specialization, right? That's a very easy example of how you can screw up your future game plan in the early game without it even realizing. You can go, all right, I want to build this heavy weapon assembly, right? And then once you're at the point where you can build it and you set everything up for it, you realize, oh man, I only have like one military building or similar. And then the other hurdle that I found was to understand how far is in this game and to understand distances and to understand how again how far is far. So if I build a second base, how far away can I build that? Do I build that 6 hexes from my main base? Do I build that through half of the map? Do I build that in a completely different wing of the map, or next to my alliance? And there's so many questions, and these choices feel so meaningful because you spend a lot of time acquiring the resources for it. Days probably. And then you are at the point where you can build that outpost, and you go like, well, what if I choose a totally silly spot for this and I waste 3 days worth of work?
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. You both are absolutely slaughtering these questions. This is fantastic.
Do you have an example of a mechanic in the game that you've encountered that you are still having difficulty understanding because the game doesn't really explain it well? How about you, Haunted?
One thing that I was unsure about is which tiles are being counted by outposts and which tiles are being counted by your bases. For example, if I build something right next to moons, should I first of all, is there a difference between a moon and a planet when it comes to counting resources? And then do only my outposts gain stuff from moons, or do they gain stuff from fields? Because the description in the thing says it increases it takes stuff from gas, metal, and so on, and it says fields. But
So
a planet is technically also a field.
yeah, so the way that works is planets and moons for harvesting purposes are the same thing. We'll get into why they're distinct later. And then fields are separate from planets and moons. So like your mining outpost, which is not the tier 4 but the tier 1 building, harvests strictly from the fields. Whereas your tier 4 mining colony harvests strictly from the planets and moons. So your station, however, harvests from fields and P&Ms. So that'll harvest everything within its radius. The outpost and the colony gives you a boost on those certain tiles that are within its radius, and they overlap. So like if you have the mining colony that's harvesting from a planet, you're getting the mining colony bonus as well as the planet's harvest. And you can also have multiple stations overlapping and multiple colonies or outposts overlapping the same tile. So that tile will benefit multiple structures.
Yeah, I see it asked a lot like, okay, am I harvesting this node? Like, okay, but now if I harvest it from one thing, is it locked into just that? Like, because you feel like, a lot of games, like things have a finite amount of resources. Okay, this has, 24, gas in it. If I put 2 stations, are both doing 24 now? Or like, so there's a lot of stuff. But yeah, they're infinite. It doesn't make sense with what
they
games
overlap.
do. Right. But yeah, that one's always an interesting one. That one caught me up a bit as well when I first started playing.
It's a bit clearer once you build the buildings, because I think if you hover over them, they actually have different colors for the for the tiles that they are actually harvesting or they're actually affecting, which is well made and well designed as a gameplay element. But you need to get to that point and need to realize that they change colors once you hover over them. And I feel like, of course, resources in a game like this is probably the most important aspect. And if it's not clear on how you gain them, that's something that's important.
Is there any mechanic that's still a big question mark for you, Captain?
I have a lot of question marks right now because I'm playing while we're speaking. I have to say that.
Of course you are.
I can't log off. It's impossible. And I still can't get rid of my Marauder camp. I don't like them. I want to get rid of them.
That's a question I see so often. New players ask, like, how can I get rid of the Marauder camp? Or how can I
tried
take over?
everything. I tried everything.
It's one of our favorite global chat answers, because the answer really is, you don't want to get rid of it. And of course, you have to get the heavy ship assembly to get bombers to actually bomb the thing out. But like, it's free resources. Like, stop trying to kill them. And it's hard to explain to them because they see they're taking the claim. But, once you get to the tier 4 out station, you automatically outclaim the Marauder entirely. But it's so hard to, push that onto the new players. But that's definitely one of my favorite. I always get a little smile whenever someone asks that in global. It's because constantly ask the first question: how do I capture this evil Marauder? Like, taking up my space. That's
And I think the next big thing will be fights. I still don't know how to count numbers in this game, and how to count like what kind of fleet do you need to get one assaulted, and don't lose everything you have. And the next thing is like, do I send my fighters with them, or do I send them a second after the fight? Will there be like I don't know, salvage together? Or there is so much questions. Like, it's insane.
another rabbit hole. They use one after another, man. Yeah, and that's where I've been trying to put out the Fecus first videos, and I put one out for Assault because of that exact same thing. We kind of had like a little baby alliance that we were running with in tournament server, and they got their first bombers. I think they had like 100 bombers, and they're like, we're ready to take out the enemy. Like, we got 100 bombers. Like, we'll do this and that. I was like, like, no, you're gonna like pretty much sacrifice all of them if you throw them into combat, right? And they're pretty precious. It takes a while to build them. So we kind of put that video out there. I just sent it to them as an alliance, and I'm like, just take this video. And that was like my first video. I'm like, here's how you attack. Like, here's how you don't lose everything. Because you're right, you spend weeks potentially building up a fleet, and then you're kind of attached to it, right? You don't want to just lose it or throw it into the void, and especially if you don't know what you're doing. So yeah, I imagine that's another pretty big hurdle for newer players to deal with.
And one big thing what happened for me was I had a fleet with fully 5 cards in it, and I just disbanded it because I wanted to have other numbers of my fleet, and cards were gone.
Oof.
Yeah, a warning box for that would be pretty good, I think.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
I think this game is a very good example of the progression of learning. Like, you start out, nothing, you get a hang of some of the basic stuff, and then you think like, okay, I know it now. Now I can make stuff happen. And then you try to make stuff happen, and you get to the point where you understand like, oh, I still don't know anything. So it's a continuous cycle of like learning and relearning and looking at stuff differently after a while.
But here we are at a very cool point as streamers, because when you do such silly things, your chat just explodes, and everyone, no, why did you do that? No, oh my god, look at your fleet. And you're like, that's content.
Yeah, it kind of is. Like, how is the backseat gaming for you guys in your streams? Is it bad, or is it enjoyable? Can you laugh at it, or does
I
it get
love it.
suppressive? All right.
Yeah, it's all right. As I described at the beginning, it's a good mix of people asking questions and people giving tips. And at this state of the game, there's nothing but appreciation due to people who give you advice, right?
Yeah, as long as nobody insults you, everything's fine. You can say everything, and opinions are there to be heard. I think, and I can just learn with that, and other people can learn with that. Hello, are you there?
Yeah, I was expecting kind of Brinks to hop in there. But we went and did kind of the best tips for new players. We went over a bunch of stuff. If we're coming up, I think on 40 minutes to an hour.
Yep, I missed the 30-minute mark.
You're good. So I think Brinks may have been disconnected. I'm taking that as kind of.
I just had the cough, so I had to mute myself. I'm really sorry.
The coronavirus going around. Brinks is a known carrier.
Yeah. I caused the space flu. Secret's out.
Right. Yeah, but I guess we can kind of wrap it up there. As coming from us, we are super duper appreciative, and as you guys keep mentioning, kind of the community being here ready for you, we all kind of were ready. We're excited to see new people come to the game. We've been enjoying so much, and it's really cool that you guys are bringing more content to the community. On top of this, kind of like the podcast, as you said, a various amount of other things we do. I normally throw up a goofy newsletter, every once a week about the status of the server that's like super duper biased, and I just say it's the only newsletter, so therefore it's the most truthful. And so we try to do goofy stuff like that. But if you guys have anything else, we can kind of open up chat for questions. Since it is 40 minutes, we kind of came to
Oh yeah, if people want to ask questions in text, like, go ahead. That's a good.
Which is your greatest advice for content makers for Starborne? What needs the most explaining for new players? How to change your avatar? How to change your avatar is always a question that eludes everyone. Like having to right click on that thing. I don't know what it is, but no one ever gets it. There used to be a dumb joke. What's an administrator? Because it used to be something that you had to cost to do something. That one and the Marauder one. The Marauder one's just my all-time favorite. Like just how evil people are naturally. Like I want to kill him. I want to take him over. You know,
I think it's more of a protective thing. Like, you have this enemy that spawns right next to you, and you instantly want to get rid of them. Like, that's your very first target. That's kind of like shoved in your face. I don't know if that's intentional or not. Like, we understand, like, after a while you understand that you want to keep it around because it's a really good resource farm. I mean, I saw you Haunted on your stream just going like, juicy, I can send my industrials there and pick up all that loot. But while others just look at that and think, okay, I'll take your loot and then I'll destroy you. This is my space. I own this. Go away. It's an interesting conundrum.
I have a pretty good question with this person with Ghost Sack here asking for how long beta is. It kind of get me to a new one. Thinking about how tournament servers and stuff work. From your guys' point as new players, how have you felt the paying mechanics in the game are playing into the overall thing? And do you feel like it is something that a lot of people immediately call out pay to win? I always like to say, I've won many servers free, but from your guys' point of view, how do you think like the systems in game are working for what they have to charge you for? Their business as well.
So I think if you're coming from a browser game background, you'll be used to this kind of thing and you might almost expect it and maybe also want it because you're a person that prefers to spend money on games like this. However, if you're coming from an RTS background, a Civ background or similar, you might find just the pure existence of features like that annoying. And I think for me, it's too early to tell yet if it has too much of an impact on the game for me because I'm not planning to spend any money on it. And sometimes when I see people that are ahead of me quite a lot in influence or anything else, obviously you think, well, did they just optimize their early game better or did they spend some money? But I think there's only so much or so far that money can get you in this game. And therefore, I try to not let it impact my view about the game so far. And go into into past of the early game phases of the first few days without any with an open mind, basically.
How about you, Captain? What are just kind of your opinions on it before we go?
Yeah, I'm just looking right now at the premium benefits, and I don't see any boost that will give you. I mean, you can play that game a little bit more relaxed because you have a bigger queue for your shipyard and your buildings. But other than that, right at the first server, this will not benefit you that much that it would change anything for players that don't spend any money. But I think in the longer run, if you get like all the research and everything, but I think this is just a point of you get very into the game, you get to play it a lot, you obviously progress a lot, and you can keep some things from server to server, so that will give you a benefit. I think playing it a lot will give you more benefits than just hopping once in a while into a server. That's what I think.
Yeah, we've coined a fun term called pay to sleep. And it's because you pay for premium to get the extra queues and you buy the extra queue lengths. So, you can get this extra Z's in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You pay for your time that you can put into work or something or family or something.
Yeah.
You can get away with having an actual life.
Right. A pretty redeeming quality to me too is the fact that you can't outright buy resources. That's what I always try to go to. It's like, you can buy 1,000,001 speed ups, but if you're not actually doing anything to get resources, you can't do it. You also can't speed up ships. You can't buy ships. And obviously, the people chasing influence, and that's always the thing. That's what's measured. So that's what you care about. But realistically, the whole game is based off you're paying the iron price of you're throwing your ships into the grinder. Like that's really where true strength is determined. Obviously, you can build them maybe a little bit quicker if you're a little bit ahead. But what we've seen time and time again is, you get 2 weeks into a game and you literally can't tell a difference between people paying and people that have been completely free. And what I always like to say is, like, you let my enemies pay for me to play free. And just like it'll be fine.
I'd say that any advantage that you can buy, even though I'd say they're minor, is easily lost by one or a handful of bad decisions. It's a strategy game. If your opponent that compared to you doesn't pay for the game or pay for any extras is smarter than you, then that matters so much more.
Oh, and one thing I really, really like that they made factions buyable. So different factions with different types of game style that you can buy them, because that will give you a boost for your personal game style. And if you know what you like to play, then hell yeah, go and buy that. That will benefit your game style.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And because that's
what are
even
your
something.
views on the factions? I think both of you have checked out the factions and you've seen like the different bonuses. And what are your views on that? Like factions in general, not just the paid ones.
I really like them. Like you get a little twist in the game that not everyone is like the same type of game style for yourself. And also, what Snoogums really pointed out, he always said, like, you want to have a player with that faction in your alliance because of, and you want to have a player with that other faction in your alliance because he can do that and that stuff really well. So this is really interesting if you build your alliance around that.
For sure. And something kind of Drunken Kerbal, I think his name is, how he's saying, it does kind of annoy him. It does kind of annoy most people, just the fact that there is a store. And there actually is a game mode, and I'm pretty sure they're open to bringing it back, but I think it does need more people. They actually opened up like this thing called the tournament server for those that are listening that don't know what that is. It was, you have to have premium to enter the server, but the whole store was closed. So there's actually no bonuses you could buy, nothing, but you had to pay the $10 entry. What are kind of you guys' thought on that? And do you think that really makes for the more competitive thing? And is that something you'd want to see servers like that in the future?
That's a great idea, I think. $10, €10, £10 is definitely worth a game that you spend so many hours with. And if you want to play competitive and use that basically as your ticket to enter this ring or this arena, I think that's a really good payoff, because that automatically identifies the people who are serious about the game, and then you will automatically know that everybody that is looking for an alliance on that tournament server is serious about it, and you don't have to think about recruiting someone or have to be worried about having to kick them at some point because they're not as active as you want them to be, or get into another situation where your ideas of playing the game don't add up. And it just narrows the crowd down to people that have a more similar idea of the game, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and that's something I just want to make apparent, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, pay to win, pay to win, pay to win. But it's like, there is another option. And if you can get 5,000 people to pay the $10 to enter, they don't need to have the store open. And, we've gotten to talk to the devs a lot. And, one of their biggest things to talk to them is, they don't want it to be a pay to win game. They understand it's there, and they've gone through great lengths to be like, man, we can literally make X amount of money here, but like the game's more important and we don't want to completely sell out on X, Y, or Z. So yeah, that was a pretty cool idea. Like, I think also if you had more than 6 stations, I think you're allowed to join, but still, the store was closed. You can't buy speed ups. You couldn't buy traders. That we didn't realize how much a lot of us were reliant on traders. They're really, really cheap. So you throw like a buck or two in the game and you can change your resources out. And you couldn't have those at all in the tournament server. And we're all like crying over like, oh, just please, like maybe add that back.
I never really openly talked about me using traders. Even if you get the free ones and they always get used up. And every now and then I could find myself in a spot where like, okay, I could make this work, but I'll just buy a cheap trader, or I have some platinum left over. And when we did not have the ability to buy them, I found myself struggling slightly more, and I started talking to people like, yeah, I gotta admit that I usually like having these cards, and people came out and like, yeah, me too. It was like this the secret that nobody really
dirty little
spoke about.
secret that everyone was using traders. You find out like your third metal flare in a row, and you're like, man, like I really wish I had a trader around. Any other kind of questions for the crowd, or if either of you two, Haunted or Captain, have any questions either for us or in general, we're definitely down to answer.
So
one
let's
thing-
talk
Oh, yeah,
again
you
about the
first.
Marauders.
How can I kill him?
Well, that's actually a pretty decent point, because there's more NPCs in this game than there's ever been in any previous iteration. I think I can pretty safely say that. If you look into the arms, just chock full of NPCs. But yeah, getting that HSA up, getting those bombers out has definitely been a priority for our alliance. We've just constantly talked about it. Hey, who can get bombers rolling? Who can get those out? And can we start taking out these NPCs, because they're guarding awesome spots for resources.
Here's something I wonder. So when it comes to the Marauders or all the NPCs, what you may or may not have noticed is when you raid an NPC, half of the ships you lose in that combat, you get refunded, right? It's what's referred to as lethality, 50% lethality. What are your assumptions based on knowing that, like about combat in general? Because if you fight another player, that does not apply. And if you fight an NPC and you're not raiding, but instead assaulting, it doesn't apply either. Was that something you were aware of, or is that maybe news for you?
Never heard of
Really new.
Yeah. That I just thought about it. Like the whole NPC part is something that's going to be an integral part of how the map plays out now, because they kind of block terrain that you want. So you have to deal with them, and they're all a bit different. Like they have these different names, so their fleet compositions are different. And so a lot of people have to engage with that mechanic and maybe get used to the fact that they could get like half of their losses back, and then you attack a player, and now all of your ships are dead. That could be a problem.
Yeah, and that's a new feature for veterans. I'm sure a bunch of veterans don't even know about that. Did you have a question, Haunted, as well?
Yeah, combat is still a big question mark to see how that plays out, but I think I'll just learn on the go. One thing that I was curious about is what are the biggest differences between previous iterations of the game and the current one?
Oh man.
Oh. I don't even know where to begin, dude.
We can hit a few like the main concepts. I would say if you're able to find video footage or maybe pictures of the old Starborne map being 19 independent sectors that were all exactly equal, just rotate a little bit, and that's kind of how you played the game. And the game was based off of basically you start in a sector, you control that sector, and then you have to go attack someone else's home sector. And they built up the entire game. And it became a very interesting thing. Or if you ended up next to a more dead sector, you'd luck out and you'd go get their GTs as well. Because that used to be the only point difference. This is actually the first time there's more than one way to win the game. That's something pretty huge. They got rid of this thing. There used to be an outpost called Navy bases where you could attack anywhere on the map in 10 hours. That was something they took out that I was very happy about.
Well, the resource distribution on the map, right? Before it was like homogeneous. No matter where on the map you were, the amount of resources spread over a certain area was always the same-ish, right? No area was inherently better than another. You could find certain spots where a certain outpost placement was slightly better than somewhere else, but in general, it didn't really matter where on the map you were, whereas now there are certain areas where there's a lot of ice but nothing else, or a lot of moons but nothing else. So that's a big change as well.
The building planner is completely different.
Oh yeah.
So like now you can kind of build whatever you want in these slots, whereas before it was like a building tree. So if you wanted tier 4, this specific tier 4 military building, you had to build all the military buildings below it. Even if you didn't want any of those other crappy buildings, like you had to go down the tree to get that one.
And with trees, that's how the old, how we see factions right now are policies. The old faction system used to also be 3 trees that you would go down. And that was pretty interesting. I think both changing away from both those out of trees was fantastic, in my opinion. I've been very happy.
I'm gonna just throw the word supply range in here.
Oh yeah, it used to not be able to defend anyone because it used to be something called supply, and you could only like defend someone within like 100 hexes of you.
The further out you went with your ships, the more expensive the labor cost was, or rather the upkeep.
You
So
could
if you
attack
wanted to,
anywhere for normal. Like it depended on where they were deployed at.
yeah, where they were stationed, like they're based compared to where their home was, and yeah, the game changed quite a lot throughout the iterations, and I think a lot of changes happened now going from alpha into beta. It's been pretty ambitious.
Clustering.
But we're hoping that I think a lot of us are hoping that this turns out to be something wonderful. But we can't tell yet. That we have to have one map go like the full 10 weeks to see what happens.
It's been up by 2 weeks. It was 8 weeks in the last server. Prior to that, it was 3 months. So like they've been messing with the time differences. That definitely makes a big difference to people.
Wow. So pretty much almost all of the basic gameplay elements are changing from face to face. That's great. That's good news, I think. And from the tonality of how you guys talked about it, you are basically happy about every change. Is there a change that you're absolutely not happy about?
Troop carriers.
Troop carriers are in a weird place, to be fair.
There are some things where, for us as people that have played the game certain ways and now have to cope with change, we're obviously biased, right? And we're spoiled by what we had in the past and now don't have, or all of a sudden having to deal with problems that we previously didn't have. I'm trying to take a step back and see all the positive that these changes are trying to achieve. But I think something to note, though, is that all of the things that the devs wanted to change, how they changed them, were done by listening to the community and the feedback. They didn't just say, like, we're going to do this because X and Y and Z and deal with it. There's always been a debate about it.
Yeah, they've been very interactive with us, and I think that's another reason, our community, at least is small, but it is pretty strong in the fact that they'll come and talk to us. They've come on this podcast, they've obviously made the channel for us in the official Discord, all that kind of stuff. And they've talked us through all the changes. Hey guys, what is the problem here? Why is this happening versus why is this? If they don't understand something, hey, we're thinking about making this change. What do the players think? And it's not always taking what we say because that'd be ridiculous, but is very much listening to the core aspects of it.
And I think opening it up for debate, because even the community isn't lopsided. We disagree with each other violently at times. And there's also on this Discord the feedback channel where you could just type out some feedback, an idea you have, and people can up and down vote your idea. And the ideas that get a lot of upvotes get earmarked, I guess you could say, and hopefully taken into consideration. There's a lot of community interaction there.
I have one you don't like, Branks, and Vane already said it. The Willy nerf. If you wanted to get nerfing specific cards that we there's a lot of cards we rely on and we like, and we have, and you go attached to the cards just as much as you do your station. And Branks has a pretty intimate story about one of them.
I don't want to get into it. It hurts. It hurts still.
But yeah, stuff like that. It's mostly I think we're still playing it, right, and I think they've retained a lot of people. So yeah, I think that's a good sign, right? They have been listening, and it has been mostly. I can't think of off the top of my head one I legitimately hated. Like I would prefer, like there's a few features in the tournament server. Like I personally prefer the tournament server system. I understand right now with the current community size, you just can't ask people to pay $10 to enter a server they may or may not, right? But I like that more just because it adds more competition. That's just without a doubt, right? Without being able to buy Cruxes or without being able to buy Buildars. But I've been pretty happy with it.
We're coming up on the hour here. It would be a good time to wrap up. It's been a very interesting podcast. I'm happy you guys came along. It's always nice to getting to have people new to the game share their point of view and share with us. Like we're biased. We see it from a certain perspective. We can't like take a step back and approach the game again with completely untainted eyes. So that's always interesting. Thank you so much for being here. And I guess if you
thank you very much for having me. It was great to be part of this. I learned a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, and go ahead and Captain, you can also put your link to your Twitch in here too, and we'll try to get, like I said earlier, our tens of followers to watch you guys, maybe check you out. And as always, like if you have any podcast ideas, something you want to hear, please PM us. Also ping Nihilus with those specifically.
Yes.
And if you have any pictures or memes or something relatable, Brinks, you can hit him up with that. He'll throw them in the videos. And if you're somehow found out about this not through the official Discord, go join the official Discord for Starborne. It's a really active community, and I'd argue it's the best place to ask questions. In-game chat can get a little rambunctious. It's a little bit more moderated here on the official Discord, and you can kind of read a little bit better. But thanks as always for joining us. If you want to cue the outro music, Albeninger, we can.
It was still in my copy paste.
There you go. Thanks as always, guys.
And make sure to stay casual. Bye, Craig.
Bye, Craig.